And I remember just being in that moment and thinking to myself, do you know what? I'm tired of fighting. I'm exhausted. I've got no energy and I just can't keep this up. And in that moment, I just really wanted it all to stop. And I guess I just wanted to die. When bad things have happened to me, in those moments, I think, why me? I nearly died. That was the worst thing that's ever happened. But then fast forward 10 years, I look back and I say, that's the best thing that has ever happened to me because of now what I'm doing. I think I'm quite sensitive to the world. So it hurts me when people are not glowing and feeling happy about themselves or what they do. So I just try to ignite that fire a little bit, because when people are happy or enjoying themselves or in their moment, they've got this glow about them that's just beautiful. And I love to see that.
From one of the UK's happiest people, what's the key to happiness? In 2006, you were on a school trip to Disneyland Paris, a very typical school trip, nothing out of the ordinary. This was until a few days in when you started to feel a little bit unwell. Take the story from here.
Right, so yes, best school trip of my life, Disneyland Paris with all my friends there. It was a 3-day school trip, and on the third day, I started to feel a bit strange. I couldn't quite understand what people were saying. I could hear words, but couldn't make sense of it. So I thought I was dehydrated. I drank some more water, and the feeling just kept coming and going in waves. And then the next day was a school day. Only 3 students showed up for class. Even the teacher was off. Everybody else was off poorly. So we got sent home that day. The following day, I started to sort of slowly deteriorate in a sense that I couldn't make sense of what I was saying. So I was trying to speak to my mum, but I was just coming up with all this gobbledygook and slurring. And she thought I was on drugs at first. And then she thought I was playing a prank on her. But then she noticed that I'd be standing up, sitting down, talking to the wall, walking upstairs, downstairs, a little bit lost and in my own world. So she sat me down and asked, like, what is happening? And by that point, I kind of understood I wasn't making sense. So the one word I could say was hurts. So I started to hit my chest saying, hurts, 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 hurts. And then she noticed I was finding it really hard to breathe and my feet had turned blue. So I was rushed to hospital, and they pretty much said to my family after like getting my x-ray results back that my only chance of survival was if they could find me an ECMO life support machine. And luckily for me, Great Ormond Street Children's Hospital in London had the last available machine. So I was rushed there, and I spent 7 weeks in hospital. They diagnosed me with strep pneumonia, influenza, staphylococcus, sepsis, all at the same time. They gave me about 10% chance to survive. I had a seizure whilst in a coma, white blood cells reduced to 0. So it's hard for my body to fight these infections. So I lost a lot of weight from being quite a tubby teen to pretty much a skeleton in the bed. And then on top of that, I had to be resuscitated 12 times during my stay in hospital. So it was very, very, very touch and go. But luckily, thankfully, I pulled through thanks to the help of every single person who was part of the team that allowed me to get my life back. And that's everybody from the doctors, surgeons, nurses, nutritionists, anaesthetists, the cleaners, everybody.
And you're able to tell this story now. Is this story told through your own eyes? Because how much of that do you actually remember?
Yeah. So they gave me some medicine which was supposed to loosen my memory, so it wasn't a traumatic experience for me in hospital. But I still remember a lot of what happened in hospital. I mean, with being on that life support machine, I had a tube that was about that long going through my neck, through the main artery, pumping blood out, oxygenating it and passing it back through my body. And I remember waking up one day and I turned to look around to see where I was. And all of a sudden I felt this really warm sensation on my chest. And I was thinking to myself, oh, that's nice and warm. What is that? So I looked down, and what happened? Where I turned my head, I dislodged the pipe, and it was just blood going everywhere, all over me. So I sort of started to shake and panic, and my mum turned around, saw what was happening, and I'll just say that she let every person in that hospital know that I needed help right away. So they rushed me back into surgery, and they had to sew the pipe to my neck just so it stayed stable. But there's loads of little stories throughout my whole stay that I really do remember in quite a lot of detail.
How did you feel throughout your stay? How terrifying or worried were you?
I don't think I was terrified or worried, because there's 2 perspectives from what I went through. I saw it from the inside looking out. So I just saw it through my eyes, looking around the room, the ceiling. But for people like, say, for example, my mum, she saw the rawness of what was happening to me. So if anything, I'll say it was more traumatic for my mum than it was for me.
Do you remember lying in that hospital bed and fighting through it? Do you remember the willingness to fight, or were there moments when you wanted to give up?
Right. So there was one moment where I had what's called a tracheostomy. So that's where they insert a small tube into the bottom of your neck and you breathe from this tube. And when you have a trachea, you can't breathe through your nose or your mouth. It just comes out of your neck. It's the weirdest experience.
Mm.
And having a trachea, they have to make sure that your airways are kept clear. And
Mhm.
when my lungs were quite infected, they poured, what do they call it? It's like a salty solution into my tube, and it would fill my lungs ever so slightly. Then I'd have to take a deep breath in, and then I'd have to exhale harshly and go until there was nothing left. And they'd have a suction tube which will suck out all the gunk that comes out, and that would help to clear my airways.
Mhm.
So they done another scan of my chest and they found 3 lumps on my lungs, but they didn't know what these lumps were. So
Mhm.
they said, hopefully by doing that physio exercise, I'll just be able to bring up the lumps and clear them.
Mhm.
So during one of those exercises, one of those lumps went to go up the tube, but it was slightly bigger than the tube and it blocked half of the tube from within. So with that happening, I really started to struggle to breathe. Bearing in mind, I've got barely any energy. I haven't got enough energy to turn my head from left to right. I can't lift up my arms. I'm pretty much staring up. And now all of a sudden, I really can't breathe. So
Mm.
my machine started to beep loud all around me. Medical team came running in, pushing my family aside, talking quickly about how they were going to remove this lump. And I remember just being in that moment and thinking to myself, do you know what? I'm tired of fighting. I'm exhausted. I've got no energy and I just can't keep this up. And in that moment, I just really wanted it all to stop. And I guess I just wanted to die. But
Mm.
then I had one thought which changed everything. I thought to myself, if I was to just give up and die, I would never, ever, ever get the opportunity to hear another Eminem album. And that literally changed everything for me. I thought I've got to keep pushing. And I just started to think about the future and all the things I'd miss out on if I just gave up. So I
Mhm.
just tried my best to keep breathing. They managed to get a thicker tube and they sucked out that lump. And I remember that first gasp, that and just thinking to myself, whoa, that was close.
Mm. And from there, things started to improve over your 7 week stay in hospital. And I know that you had to start to relearn how to do things, even to walk and slight movements. And we read about this so many times of people saying, yeah, I had to learn how to walk again, how to talk again. And sometimes I feel like it's just sort of dropped into a conversation. But what does it actually feel like to lose the ability to do those things and then having to relearn them?
It feels like your brain and your body are disconnected because my brain, it knows how to walk. I've been walking my whole life, but my
Mhm.
body physically couldn't do it. My body felt as if it was so heavy, as if I was an elephant. So for me to lift my arm, it just felt like it was the hardest thing ever, and it would take a lot of energy to do so.
Mhm.
So the team would always encourage me to keep moving, and I'd have to squeeze on the ball just to make a fist. And then I'd have to learn to touch my finger to my nose and try to get the tip of my nose. Then I'd have to learn how to sit up in my bed without toppling over. So I had to relearn balance. And it was quite confusing because growing up and even now, I don't really like people doing things for me. I like to just do it myself. I don't want to be a bother to people. So it was quite frustrating for myself that I couldn't do it. But then I noticed that the more I was pushing myself, the more machines they would take away. The more I was pushing myself, the more medicine and drugs got taken away. So I felt like I was breaking free. So in a way, what it done to me, it allowed me to become sort of best friends with myself
Mhm.
and cheer myself on. So from taking my first 2 steps, and when I first took my first step, it's like my leg was facing inwards and sort of dragging along the floor. And I was
Mhm.
thinking to myself, why is it dragging like that? Okay, let me try and straighten my leg a little bit. And I was focusing on every detail I had to do to make a footstep. And then taking 2 steps, I thought to myself, I want to take 5. So I'd always find a way to push a little bit beyond what they would say. They would say, okay, and let's take 5 steps. And I'd always push 6 just to get a little bit more out of it. And I think that that mentality has stuck with me ever since. Just always try a little bit more, keep pushing, see what you can do if you go beyond that barrier. So in a way, I appreciate what happened to me because of the way it's made me think about just everything in general and like in life. It's helped me to be a bit more focused on myself and just appreciative of this temporary experience that we're a part of.
Mhm. When you walked out of that hospital after 7 weeks, how
Mhm.
did that feel?
Strange. It was so strange because bearing in mind, I've been staring at a ceiling for 7 weeks. I've not seen outside. So it felt brand new. And the best way I can describe it, imagine going on holiday for a long period of time abroad, and then you come back home and you see English number plates. They look a bit different because you're used to seeing different number plates. So you have to slowly adjust back to what England is like. And that's what it felt like. And I remember the first thing I paid attention to was the pace of life. Just looking out the taxi window and seeing people moving, getting from A to B, and just being wowed by how people were moving. Because me at my fastest are still very, very slow. And I remember seeing a woman run for the bus and it blew my mind. The fact that she was running with both of her legs leaving the ground, I was like, whoa, I can't wait till I can do that. You know, so she inspired me just by running for the bus. And then I saw a woman, she was pushing a buggy, then she stopped and picked up her baby. The baby's like, goo goo gaga. She's like, oh, baby, having a really nice moment. And that's when I realized that the old me, what I would have saw there was a mum playing with her daughter or her son. But on that day, I saw it in a different way. I saw a little baby, brand new to the world, barely understands anything, and a full-grown woman who kind of gets the gist of life. But they were able to communicate on the same level, which was showing each other love. They both understood that. So by looking out the window and seeing that, it's like I was feeling what they were feeling. I just felt warm and happy inside. So I think the biggest change for me since leaving hospital was I pay attention to the smaller details in life and I allow my body to experience feelings. You know, I pay attention to my senses and I check in with myself many, many times just throughout the day, just to remind myself life is a temporary experience that will come to an end. Not enough to scare myself, but just to be very appreciative of what I'm a part of.
How do you do that? How do you check in with yourself?
So my favorite thing to do in the whole wide world is think. I just love to think. I'm not really one about the PlayStation. I don't really watch sports or football, play all of that. I just love to think. So I always check in with the voices in my head to see which one is speaking with me, because I've got two voices in my head. One is what I call my dreamer and one is my puller backer. The dreamer voice is that voice that is very curious and it's like, imagine what it would be like imagine if I ever had the opportunity to, how cool would it be if I could create? And it's always just throwing these random ideas. And then I've got my other voice, the puller backer, which is like, we're not good enough for that. We're not smart enough for that. We'll do that another day. And it always tries to delay me or stop me from doing things that I think about. So when I catch myself, I keep thinking to myself, what voice is speaking with me? And what voice do I want to listen to? Because one wants the best for me and one wants to talk me out of things and for nothing to change. So I'm always checking in how I'm feeling. Okay, am I feeling a happy 10? Am I happy 8? Okay, I'm at a 7. Why is that? What is it that's bugging me? And I'll just be very open and honest with myself, because if I lie to myself, I'm lying to me and I know when I'm lying. So that's weird. So I try to be sort of like a best friend with the voices in my head to always help me get through things. And then when I achieve something, I get that feeling of, whoa, I did it. And it's almost like that dreamer voice is growing a little bit stronger and that puller backer voice is getting smaller. So now, after understanding that I've got those two voices, my dreamer voice is quite big. I quite believe in myself and doing things, jumping into fear and trying things. That puller backer voice is quite small. It's still there, but the volume's turned right down. So if it comes near me, I flick it away. Because I know the difference of what will happen if I listen to that voice and what will happen if I listen to that voice. So I always try to work with myself.
What caused all of this for you to go into hospital?
Oh, so they think it was the air conditioning on the coach, because when we were driving back from Disneyland, we were in England driving down the motorway, and then the coach started to swerve across the motorway. We all thought we were going to crash. Kids were flying everywhere. Then the driver pulled onto the hard shoulder, slammed on the brakes, and then everyone went flying forward. And then he stood up and looked down the aisle of the coach, and then he ran off the coach. So we were thinking, what's going on? So we ran to the window and the driver started to be sick everywhere. So we had another driver to come collect us and take us back to school, but we thought nothing of it. So when I was in hospital, they narrowed it down to being the air conditioning, and everybody else recovered after maybe 2 or 3 days. But I just took a turn for the worse and really started to deteriorate.
Right. Your dad as well, after you came out of hospital, he said once through tears, "I'm so happy to have my son back." How did those words affect how you live your life today?
That was a moment in my life, because this was the day I came back from hospital, opened the front door. My dad, he carried me upstairs because I couldn't climb stairs at that point. Opened my bedroom door and I had my family, my friends jumping and cheering, "Ant's home." And it felt really nice to be back. And then I noticed that my dad disappeared from the room. So I asked my mum, "Oh, where's dad?" And she said, I don't know, let's go and find him. So he
Mm.
was in the next room, just staring out the window. And when we entered the room, he just stayed staring out the window. So it felt quite weird. And then when he turned around, that was the first time ever in my life that I've seen him cry.
Mm.
And, seeing my dad cry, I didn't know what to think or say or do because that's never happened before. And my
Mm.
mom asked him, how you feel, why are you crying? And he just said, I'm just so happy to have my son back. And when he said that, it's like I went inside my head and I really started to understand that I nearly didn't exist anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So then it started to help me to think about all the people that were involved in helping me get my life back. And it
Mm.
made me really thankful. I started to think about everybody, every single person, no matter if they were a receptionist, organizing meetings for the surgeons, every single person played this big part in building this team that allowed me to be here. And I'm just one miracle that's happened in one hospital. And
Mm.
miracles happen every single day thanks to these amazing people.
Mm. Does that change your perspective on the world today when, say, for example, you're out grocery shopping, and do you now realize the team that's behind that in order for the food to get on a shelf, for example?
Yeah, I noticed the bigger picture of teams. And what really upsets me is, say, for example, if I'm going to go do a talk at a conference and I meet someone, they introduce themselves and they say, oh, I'm just a receptionist. And they sort of put themselves down. That really, really affects me. And I'll have to take a moment to pull them aside and say, no, please don't ever, ever say that because you're putting yourself down. You're a valuable part of the team. So for people to do that, in a way, I don't know, I think I'm quite sensitive to the world. So it hurts me when people are not glowing and feeling happy about themselves or what they do. So I just try to ignite that fire a little bit. Because when people are happy or enjoying themselves or in their moment, they've got this glow about them that's just beautiful. And I love to see that. So if I can help someone along the way, just find a little bit of a glow and like send them on their way, then, that means a lot for me just to help create that positive rippling effect.
Mm. And this is coming from the man who was named by the Sunday Independent as one of the happiest people in the UK a few years back. What does that word happiness mean to you?
Well, I think every emotion that we go through is temporary. Everything is temporary. Whether we are happy, whether we are sad, angry, whatever it be, it's never lasting forever. We tend to think that when we're in a low point, this is just life now. This is just the way it's going to be. When we're really, really happy, nothing can stop us. No one can say anything because we're just buzzing and glowing. But life, what I've understood from my years is life doesn't go like this and life doesn't go like this. Life is forever going like this. And what I've really paid attention to recently is energies and how they work together, both positive and negative. So when bad things have happened to me, in those moments, I think, why me? I nearly died. That was the worst thing that's ever happened. But then fast forward 10 years, I look back and I say, that's the best thing that has ever happened to me because of now what I'm doing. Facing my biggest fear, which was speaking in front of people. At the time I was doing it, I had the butterflies, I was nervous, I didn't want to do it. But then that was the moment that when I got the first big round of applause from the audience, I got that buzz, that feeling of, whoa, that felt good. Why am I feeling so good if this is something I don't like doing? So that opened the door of curiosity, which led me down this path to continue speaking. So now I appreciate my lows as much as my highs, because in my lows, that's where the positive seed is planted, but it won't make sense in that moment. A bit of time has to pass first to make that connection. So it's like, by going through all these bad things, it's a word we use a lot, resilience. It's helped me build resilience. By resilience, what I mean is your ability to bounce back and how fast you can bounce back from going through something low. So where I've built resilience, even going through depression, I feel like I can go through things again because I've got the blueprint of how to get myself out of these things. So I respect and appreciate everything that happens to me, whether it's good or bad. That's just the flow of life.
And it's really interesting what you're saying about the zigzag of life and the up and downs. Do you think that sometimes we put too much pressure on ourselves to be happy all the time?
Yeah, I think the generation that we're living in now, the time we're living in now is very fast paced. So we look for happiness quickly. We're looking for something to make us happiness come today, tomorrow, or if we do X, Y, and Z, then we're going to be happy. But I don't think happiness works like that. I think happiness should be little and often. So the more you can do small things and just stop and say, I did that. Whether it's making someone a cup of tea and saying, here's your cup of tea, and just seeing that smile on their face when they say, oh, thank you, you just take that on board, and that will just up your spirit ever so slightly, just by a little small percentage. And if you keep doing that, you'll keep your happiness level quite high. If you're sitting at a lower level and you're just trying to do this big thing to make you happy, it's not going to work. Because if you try to jump high too quick, you could fall down just as quick. To make something sustainable and longer lasting, you have to build that foundation bit by bit over a period of time. So something I try to share, especially with the younger generations when I speak in schools, is don't be afraid of time. Time is something that some people look at as something that's slipping away from us and we're running out of time. If you flip it on its head, time is the best thing ever, because the more time you put into something, the greater it becomes.
And it's really interesting what you were saying earlier as well about those two voices in your head. One that's telling you to go and get it, and one's just holding you back a little bit. How do you fight against the one that's holding you back a little bit?
So for example, I remember my mum, she sent me to the shop and she asked me to get something. And as I was walking, that dreamer voice came to me and said, I wonder how cool it would be to run a half marathon. And yeah, that would be kind of cool. And I just envisioned it and it felt like a big achievement. So then the puller backer came in and was like, actually, no, your lungs were bad. You can get hurt. It could be quite dangerous. Let's not do it. And just by catching those voices, I thought, no, okay, so I'm one person. One voice is saying, let's go. One voice is saying, let's not go. I'm in charge though. I can listen to whatever voice I want to listen to. So just by saying, puller backer, shh, dreamer, what was you saying? Right, half marathon. Let's break it down. What do I need to do? Okay, you need to start eating healthy. You need to start exercising. You need to start running. Turn that into a consistent pattern. And over a period of time, you'll be ready for the half marathon. So once it makes logical sense to me, then I can go with that voice because I understand and I've got the map of what I need to do. So then come the day of the half marathon, I'm at the start line and the dreamer's like, oh, it's going to be amazing crossing that finish line. I envisioned it in slow motion, running through the ribbon. Yes. And then as I started to run, a fair few miles in, the puller backer came out of nowhere. We're out of breath. I don't think we could do it. I don't think we've trained enough. Let's go home, but we'll train really hard this year. We'll come back stronger next year, but let's quit. And just by taking that moment to say, oh, this voice has come back, all right? But you're saying stop. The other voice is saying, let's go. I'm in charge. I get to decide. If I stop, I'm going to feel bad about quitting later. If I continue going and I get to that finish line, I know that body buzz is waiting for me. So I said, Rebecca, go away. Dreamer, finish line, finish line, finish line. Got to the finish line. And what did I get? That feeling of, I did it, I did it, I did it. And then that voice grows stronger again. So it's always checking in and seeing the reality of what will happen if you listen to that voice or that voice and just being honest with yourself. Sometimes, you know, it's okay to give up and say, you know what, I just don't have the energy or I'm going to stop. But just recognizing that you've done that and you will feel sad. Sadness is temporary. Get over it as soon as you can and then go back to that other voice. Say, you know what, but because I failed that, I'm going to do 100 press-ups throughout the day. So then I hit 100 press-ups and I get that body buzz again. And I'm like, okay, I'm back on sides with myself. Let's go do this.
How did you begin to, not even to listen to the voices, even before that, how did you even begin to find the voices?
That's a hard question because it's hard to sort of explain what goes on in your head. But I think growing up, I've always just been very observant with everything. I've always liked to be the quiet person, just paying attention to what's going on. Life has always been magical to me. And I guess even from a young age, I've always tried to push myself a little bit further. Like I remember being a kid playing outside and there'd be like a tree and the leaves would be hanging and I'd jump and touch the leaf and I wouldn't be able to do it. And then I'll set myself a goal and say, if I don't touch that leaf, then something bad's going to happen to my mum or my dad or this. So then I'd like make sure that I don't go unless I touch that leaf. And I think just getting that, yes, I did it. I think that has stuck with me, but it's just developed over time.
What would you say is your greatest motto for your life?
Oh, if you say the word no, nothing changes. If you say the word yes, amazing things could happen. And that's something that really came to life for me from the first experience of doing a big public talk, because that came by accident. Great Ormond Street Children's Charity called me after I recovered and asked if I'd like to share my story with Morgan Stanley. I did not know who Morgan Stanley were. And for anyone watching, that don't know who Morgan Stanley are, they're a big investment banking firm that is global, humongous company all around the world. I didn't know this. I thought Morgan Stanley were two people, Morgan and Stanley. So I said, oh, sure, happy to do so. Who's going to be there? Is it just Morgan and Stanley? How do you want to do this? And they said, oh, no, it's going to be a big charity event, 400 people. We want you to be the guest speaker. Would you like to do it? And in that moment, I thought to myself, I've got to make a choice now. Do I say yes or do I say no? Okay, let's break it down. If I say no, I could be like, I'm sorry, but I'm too scared. Can you choose someone else? And they would have said, sure, thank you anyway. Hang up the phone and I just continue my day as normal. If I say the word yes, amazing things could happen. So I said yes, I've done that talk, and that's when I got the first body bars that led me down that road. And then the second opportunity, they called back a couple of years later and asked if I'd like to help win a multi-million-pound charity partnership with a company called Whitbread. I didn't know who Whitbread were. I thought they were a bakery that made bread. Whitbread is not a bakery. They own big power brands. They owned Costa Coffee, Premier Inn hotels, Beefeater restaurants, and some other restaurant brands. So again, I was in that moment of, that's a big partnership, 7.5 million. What happens if I mess up? All these sick children are going to miss out on that money because of me. That's a lot of pressure. I've got a choice to make. If I say the word no, I could say thank you, but I don't think I'm on that level to even help do something like that. I've never ever done something like that before. Can you choose someone else? Sure, no problem. Hang up the phone. I just carry on my day as normal. If I say yes, amazing things could happen. I said yes. We've done a charity pitch. Long story short, the partnership was won. So then I was approached by two of the managing directors from Whitbread, and he asked if I'd like to join Whitbread and help them raise this money. And I've never seen myself as a smart person. I don't really know big, long words. Not as an excuse, but my dyslexia means it takes me a long time to write an email, and I'm not good at writing big structured things. So I had all this doubt saying, no, we can't do it. So I went through the process. If I say yes, if I say no, I said yes. And it was the best thing I've ever done because it took me on a 5-year journey traveling the whole of the UK. And I'm from the London bubble. To me, that was the world. So getting to go to Scotland, Ireland, Wales, Manchester, Liverpool, Newcastle, Cornwall, everywhere in between, I just saw the beauty of the country and the people within the country and the power of teamwork on a mass level. And all of this, my whole journey has happened because I kept saying yes to opportunities. So my biggest motto in life is say yes when you feel like you want to say no, because it could be the best thing that's ever happened to you.
And from one of the UK's happiest people, what's the key to happiness?
Appreciation, I think. Appreciation of all of your senses. So the first thing is grounding yourself, and I do that by saying, you know, life is not forever, it's temporary. Not in a way to scare myself, but just to be appreciative that I'm part of this moment. And then the second thing I do is connect to one of my senses. And that could be simply just, I don't know, smelling my t-shirt. I can smell the subtle aftershave, or I can smell my laundry detergent, and just what that smell does to my body. Does it make me feel happy? And what level? What does that do? Does it bring back memories? Or I could just stroke on my beard like this and just paying attention to the sounds of the, or what it does to my fingertips and how it feels, and just fine-tuning my thoughts into that very, very moment and just paying attention to that exact moment that you're in. And then times in that feeling, your imagination is powerful. You can always times a feeling by 10 in your head. And you say, oh, that was really, really nice. And just like up your happiness, even if it's just by 1%, we all have it within us to make ourselves 1% happier. You know, if you're feeling at your lowest of your lows, you can always get 1% happier. And that could be, like I said, you can make a cup of tea, you can send a text message to someone saying how grateful you are of that person. You can do 2 push-ups, just say you've done 2 push-ups. Anything you do, you can up your happiness by 1%. So just those, a mixture of those things will keep you just reminded that happiness and how you feel, that felt good. I like that. Let me continue doing that. Or I'm going to do that again. And you can just, over time, just build yourself. And the more you practice something, the more your brain adjusts to that way of thinking.
Well, you may be one of the happiest people in the UK, but you've certainly put a smile on my face today, Anthony.
I'm happy to hear that.